Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Producers and Publishing Songtrust webinar. We have a team monitoring the chat box here, so feel free to ask questions and we will address them later in the Q&A. Also, there will be replay available of this webinar for you to watch later, and there will be downloadable resources for you. So, my name is Ben O'Connell. I've worked at Songtrust for about almost 2 years now. I do A&R and artist outreach, and I am a songwriter. I work with artists outside of work, and I am a Songtrust client. And I'm here with our guest host, Kato. What's up, Kato?
What's up, Ben?
How we doing today?
I'm amazing, man. I'm excited to be here.
You want to give a quick intro?
Yeah. First of all, what's going on, everyone? I go by Kato on the track. I'm a producer, entrepreneur. I've been making music, been in the music industry for about 12 years now. I've worked with Grammy-nominated multi-platinum artists like Joyner Lucas, B.O.B., Wu-Tang Clan, K-Camp, Tory Lanez, Hobson, Dizzy Wright, Jaron Benton, Futuristic, Token, Ritz. The list goes on and on, man. So, I'm just excited to be here and talk to all the songwriters that we got in here, and it's going to be dope.
Absolutely. And we are obviously happy to have you. And you are also a Songtrust client, if I'm not mistaken.
Of course.
Cool. So today we're going to talk about, all things producers and publishing, how you should view yourself as a producer, different things to keep in mind when you're collaborating with people, when you're sending beats out, work for hires, really everything related to the publishing industry, specific to producers. And hopefully you guys learn a lot. And like I said, feel free to message the chat box if you have any questions throughout. So first, we're going to start with a myth here that we often come across. I'm just a producer, not a songwriter. So in terms of publishing, that could not be more false. If you are a producer, a music producer, creating beats, working with people, you are in fact labeled a songwriter. And that is really how you should think of yourself. If you're producing for people, you're going to be considered a songwriter when it comes to publishing. You will be entitled to ownership and therefore royalties if you did contribute to a work. So as a producer, you shouldn't just think of yourself as a producer only. You should also think of yourself as a songwriter ultimately. Kato, is this something that you've kind of come across with your audience?
Yeah, I think, those terms can easily get confused because when you say songwriter, the first thing that pops into people's head is like, oh, someone that actually writes the lyrics of a song, right? But yeah, absolutely. Producers are considered songwriters because we write the music, the underlying music to any composition. So once I realized that I was a songwriter, it kind of brought a lot more clarity in terms of like the publishing world and that type of thing.
Totally. So if you are a producer out there, just remember to consider yourself a songwriter. You're, essentially entitled to the same rights as a normal traditional songwriter is when it comes to royalties and ownership on a work. So we just wanted to clarify that real quick. You should consider yourself a songwriter. So here we're going to get into the breakdown of an original song and the 2 copyrights that are a part of every song. This is super important foundational knowledge for you to have in order to understand the types of royalties that you're potentially owed, what you're entitled to, what is generated from your song, from a song you produce, from a song you co-produced or co-wrote, right? So on the right here, we have the master recording. That's the physical recording of a song. And that is going to generate 2 different types of royalties: master recording revenue, typically collected by your distributor, DistroKid, CD Baby, TuneCore, etc., and digital performance royalties, which are also generated on the master side, typically collected by Sound Exchange. On the other side here, We have the composition, often referred to as publishing, which is what Songtrust deals with. And your publishing is going to generate mechanical royalties as well as performance royalties, which we will get further into on this next slide here. So we're going to talk about primarily just the composition side, the publishing, and what to keep in mind as a producer. So performance royalties, some of you may be familiar with performance royalties. Those are typically collected by PROs or CMOs, also referred to as societies, collection organizations, things of that nature, throughout the world. Here in the US, those are BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC, which you may be affiliated with one of them. If not, you absolutely should. And those performance royalties are going to get further broken out into writer share and publisher share. So your writer share of performance royalties is sent directly from the PROs and CMOs, collection societies, to you as a writer. If you're affiliated with BMI or ASCAP or CSAC here in the US, you get what's called your writer share of performance royalties directly from one of them. Your publisher share is sent from the PROs, CMOs to an affiliated publishing entity. And on the mechanical royalty side, those are generated and collected by mechanical agencies throughout the world. In the US here, we have HFA, Harry Fox Agency, MRI, Music Reports, Inc., and MediaNet. And those only have a publisher share. There is no writer share of mechanical royalties. And those are sent to an affiliated publishing entity. Kato, real quick, are you affiliated with either BMI, ASCAP, or CSAC?
Yeah, I'm with ASCAP.
Beautiful. I'm with BMI myself as a songwriter. Super important to be affiliated with one of them. But we just wanted to kind of give you guys an understanding of what the different types of royalties that are generated are. We will go into a little bit more detail in those later, but just to kind of give you, this general foundation of what is generated by your music and what to keep in mind when you're producing or co-writing or, even releasing music on your own. So as a producer, there's going to be a lot of different terminology thrown around while you're working with other artists and whatnot, or working with, major labels. And it's really good to understand what these mean and the significance of them. So a producer cut is typically referred to what your writing credit is, right? What your ownership of the publishing is. So if Kato produced a track for me and I recorded over it and I sent it out, and we agreed to a 50-50 publishing split, Kato's producer cut essentially is just his cut of the publishing. He would get 50%. And points typically refer to the percentage of money paid out from the master recording revenue. This is not publishing. It's really just you're going to get maybe a few percentage points on the master recording. So if you are working with artists who are signed to labels, typically that artist's label is going to own their masters, right? It's not as simple as you just splitting the money on DistroKid or something like that. That label is going to own that master recording. And for your contribution to the record as the producer, they may give you anywhere from 1, 2, 5, even as high as 10 or 20% of, basically what they end up making after they recoup their costs on that record. Kato, do you want to speak a little bit about producer cuts and points? I'm sure you have some experience with both of these, as a producer.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously all producers, I think, should maintain their portion of the publishing. Like you should never give up any of your publishing. If someone's trying to take any percentage of your publishing, then you want to approach that situation just really cautiously, because that's essentially how a lot of producers are getting paid, is with the publishing, the ownership of that copyright. And so, points are definitely important too. But a lot of times, like you said, Ben, when there's a record label involved, they'll typically take ownership of the masters in exchange for, signing the artist, and they'll usually own that copyright. But definitely producers want to make sure you keep all of your publishing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely want to maintain ownership. It's a royalty stream that you can potentially earn money on for the rest of your life. Um, in my experience working with producers who have produced records for major label artists, that whole points on the master thing, it's great in theory, but oftentimes, they're recouping their costs before they end up paying the producers outright. And if they put a big marketing budget into this song, that's going to go up against the recoupment before you even get paid out. So it's good to have, obviously. Again, in my experience, the producers I've worked with end up not even seeing any money from points on the master. If they do, it's not for years and years later once that label has recouped their costs. But the producers primarily rely on their publishing royalties and their publishing income. So like Kato said, it's super important to try to maintain your ownership for as long as you can. And if you are going to sign away your publishing, you want to at least have a lawyer involved. You want to understand the significance of that, understanding the fact that you're giving up ownership of a copyright, intellectual property at the end of the day. And a small upfront fee right now might seem like a lot of money, but you could potentially earn more than that small upfront fee over, a longer period of time. So these are just things to keep in mind if you're going to be producing or working with other artists, which does bring us to this next slide here, opportunities for producers. It's almost 2020. We live in a digital era. I think it's a great time for producers. Producers are, almost artists at this point, right? They're artists, they're A&Rs. They're determining what next sound is going to be popular. They're releasing records on their own as if they are artists, right? But the three main things here that we wanted to highlight are collaborations and placements, right? Beat leasing and selling exclusives, and work for hires. So Kato, in your experience, have you dealt with all three of these buckets? Are you primarily working with artists in the studio and, artists that and producing with them in a session? Are you leasing beats online? Have you sold exclusives? And have you ever done work for hires?
I've done all the above.
All the above.
I obviously try to stay away from work for hires as much as possible. I'll take on a work for hire if it really makes sense, like if they're paying me a lot of money on the front end, because that just means I'm not going to receive anything on the back end. That's what a work for hire is. But yeah, I definitely do beat leasing. I've sold beats exclusively to artists, both independent and major. I also have gotten a lot of placements. I do a lot of collaborations. So, at this point in my career, I'm kind of more in the space where I want to lock in the studio and be a little bit more selective about the artists that I work with. So that's where I'm kind of at right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think when we met in Atlanta, you did mention that you've been working with kind of smaller up and coming acts that
Yes.
personally, and you're developing that relationship with them as opposed to just, throwing your beats online somewhere, or trying to place it with a big artist whose manager will never email you back, right? Instead of chasing that big placement, there's a lot of money to be made as a producer in publishing, even if you're just working with artists in your local community. And collaborating with artists, in the studio. So obviously collaborations and placements, if you are with an artist in the studio and you make a beat for them and they record over it, you're going to be entitled to publishing royalties and ownership there, right? Maybe you didn't make any money in the session. Maybe you don't charge an hourly rate if you're engineering as well. You just do the session for free, knowing whatever song you make, you're going to get a percentage of the ownership of the publishing. I'm sure a lot of people in this webinar have either leased beats online or sold exclusive beats. That's essentially leasing non-exclusively a beat to multiple people potentially, usually for a smaller fee, versus selling an exclusive beat, for a higher fee to only one person. Either way, you're still potentially able to maintain ownership of your publishing. This really does come down to the agreement that you've put in place or your beat leasing website has put in place. So if you're not familiar with that, you'll just want to dig a little bit online on the website that you use and look more into that. And then obviously work for hires, like Kato mentioned, receiving an upfront fee and then waiving any ownership for your work. If you're going to do that, just understand the significance of that. You will not make any money on the back end, any residual income. You're just taking an upfront fee. So you want to ensure that if you're going to be doing that, that fee is as high as possible. Oftentimes you see that with session musicians. Maybe you're just a guitarist, and a major label artist or an indie artist wants to hire you just to lay down guitar on this track. Instead of giving you publishing, maybe they'll just give you a couple $100, whatever it is. So these are the three main opportunities that we've identified for producers. If you can think of any others, feel free to throw them in the chat box. Moving forward here, we're going to talk about sampling and interpolating. Basically, the difference is an interpolation only uses the melody or lyrics from another song, but you're not actually using the recording, right? So I'm just going to hear a melody in another song, maybe try to recreate it, with keys or a guitar, but I'm not actually using any of the recording of another song. Sampling is actually using the other sound recording in your song, maybe ripping it or downloading it, chopping it up, and embodying that in a new recording. So, Kato, as a producer, do you interpolate? Do you sample? Maybe you can highlight some of the difficulties with when doing that, understanding that you're going to have to clear a lot of these rights because you probably don't own them. What is your experience with these two topics here?
Yeah, so sampling can definitely get tricky. There are a lot of limitations with sampling, and it can get hard, especially if you're independent, to clear samples. So I try to stay away from sampling records or vinyl, anything that's, copyrighted. I try to stay away from. I do use like Splice, and I download sample packs, and I make sure that I understand the terms that are attached to those samples or loops. And as far as interpolation, I think the first big one that jumps into my head right away is the Juice WRLD record, right? I think it was Lucid Dreams, right?
Yes.
And that was an interpolation of a Sting record. And they ran into a lot of legal problems with that. So I don't know the full details of how that worked out, but I know even that can get kind of sticky sometimes. So just want to be careful and understand the legal rights and limitations that you have whenever you're working with samples or interpolations.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, sampling, since you're using the master recording and the publishing in your new song, you will have to clear both the publishing copyright as well as the master recording. And these are, difficult processes. You're going to have to reach out to either publishers or labels or artists themselves. And it's really just going to be an open negotiation. They can ask for upfront fees. They can ask for ownership percentages. They can really ask for whatever they want. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're going to be sampling. And if you're interpolating, you're only going to have to clear the publishing since you're not using any actual master recording. So only going to have to clear one copyright. But again, it's going to be an open negotiation. They may ask for a fee. They may ask for percentage, a combination of the two. But we don't want to discourage either of these. They, when done correctly, can serve a great purpose. But just understand, as an independent creator, the odds of you clearing these kinds of things, and keeping those fees down are not all that likely. So while, you're inspired by other artists and other types of music, and that's great, just understand the significance of that. And ultimately, it may be cheaper if you just try to create from scratch, like Kato mentioned. And again, this doesn't have to do with Splice or any sample packs or anything like that. It's really more, sound recordings and other songs. But like Kato mentioned, you are going to want to look at the terms of service and the agreements that you're agreeing to if you're downloading sample packs. I know, the majority of Splice is royalty free, meaning, you can download those samples and use them in your songs. But I have seen other websites that in the terms of service say, this does not mean you can, straight up use these in a song and put it out. You're still going to have to clear it from us, and they still may, ask for a percent of the publishing or even of the master. So just wanted to cover these real quickly. give you guys an idea, how difficult it may or may not be. So moving forward, we're going to talk about co-writers and split sheets here, just to give you kind of a visual representation of what the publishing breakdown can look like on a song. So if you're Kato and you produce a beat from scratch, and maybe Kato on the producer wants to be Kato the rapper, and Kato records over it, and he drops a song that is entirely him, he might, have 100% of both the master and the publishing, right? Since he's the only person. But let's say Kato produced a beat, he sent it to me, I recorded over it, but then I got my friend to feature on it as a guest vocalist, and then I had another producer come in and co-produce it with Kato. Maybe we felt that all four of us equally contributed to the record, and maybe we'll split that publishing 25 ways, 25% between the four of us. Every song is different. What you contribute to each song is going to be case by case. That song could be 50-50 if it's just me and Kato, or if Kato made the beat and wrote the whole hook and sent it to me, maybe it's 70-30 in Kato's favor. Ultimately, this is just an open conversation between you and your collaborators. It does have implications in terms of how and whether or not you're going to get paid. So we do recommend that you sign a split sheet with your collaborators, which is essentially just a document that outlines who wrote what and what percentages each person has on each song. And obviously a co-writer is anybody who contributes to a work that you are also credited on. Kato, how do you kind of determine splits with your collaborators and artists that you work with? Obviously it's a case-by-case basis. Do you sign split sheets? Do you talk about splits before or after the record comes out? Do you get on an email thread with people? What's kind of the way that you go about determining splits and documenting all of this? Kato, can you hear me?
My bad. Can you hear me?
Oh, you're good? Yes. I can hear you. Did you hear my question?
Yeah, I did.
Cool.
So, typically 9 times out of 10, when I'm working with someone or collaborating with an artist or producer, after the record is done, and preferably before it's released, I'll just have that conversation with them. If they don't bring it up first, then I'll approach them and be like, yo, let's do the split sheets. And I'll just share a Google Doc or like a spreadsheet with them and outline everyone's information, their name, their email, phone number, address, their publishing information, whether they're with BMI, ASCAP. And then we'll have a section where it lists everyone's share or publishing on the record. I think it's a little bit weird if you've never done it before. It's like, how do you initiate this conversation? But it's literally just bringing it up and making sure that everyone is protected. Because at the end of the day, that's what split sheets are. It's not just you getting protected. It's like everyone making sure that they know what percentage of the record they have. And so, like you said, Ben, it's just a conversation that you have with them. And that way all the songwriters in that creative process are protected. So when you get to that point where you're registering the song with the Songtrust or with your PRO, then there's no sort of confusion about who owns what. And because if there is conflicting, data about who owns what percentage of the record, then nobody gets paid. Right? It goes into conflict and nobody will get paid until that's resolved. So you don't want to have that problem once the record comes out. You want to just nip that in the bud before any music comes out.
Absolutely. And even if you're working with your close friends or artists that you frequently work with, and it might be just assumed, it's a 50-50 split, even that's something that you want to document, whether it's a split sheet or a Google spreadsheet, like you mentioned. Because it does determine how much people are going to get paid, whether or not people get paid. I'm sure some of you have seen headlines about different songs that have been released years ago that, the splits are still in dispute. People are still arguing over percentages, right? All that can kind of be not necessary if you just document this stuff before the record comes out, right? Because it's really easy to agree on splits, before the song's made any money, but you put that song out and you try to determine the splits when it has 10 million streams, people are probably going to get a little greedy, right? And it's going to, your memory is going to get a little foggy from, the session that happened 3 years ago, right? So like Kato mentioned, ideally you're determining this stuff before the record comes out, before it starts making any money. And, this will prevent any issues from kind of arising down the line. So thank you for that. Next here, we're just going to talk about publishing in general, right? This is an important topic for you as a producer. Oftentimes, this is going to be the main source of income for you. Oftentimes producers are not getting cuts of the master. A lot of producers aren't releasing records on their own. They're just producing for other artists. And there is really no better way to make money than ensuring that you have your publishing ownership and you're properly collecting, which we will get into in a little bit. It is a long game. It may take 6 to 9 to 12 months even to collect any publishing royalty on a record that you produced. What you get paid in your distribution account might come in 2 to 3 months, but publishing is just the nature of the industry is it takes a lot longer for this money to come in. So again, you want to make sure that you're, signing a split sheet, determining your splits, getting those songs registered as soon as they are released and as soon as they start making money. And if you don't, they will end up in the black box, which is essentially a lump sum of money of uncollected royalties from people like myself before I knew what any of this meant, potentially on behalf of people like Kato. Maybe you've lost some money to the black box. These are your hard-earned royalties that essentially, if you don't collect in about 2 to 3 years, will get paid out to the biggest publishers, artists, and producers in the industry. So if you don't want Metro or DJ Mustard getting your royalties, you want to ensure that you are registering these works at the societies with Songtrust to ensure that you are properly collecting everything. So with that, we're going to talk about a creator checklist. This is a checklist of 4 things that every creator needs to essentially collect everything that they're owed. It's something that we talk about a lot over here at Songtrust. Distribution, right? Distributing the record, DistroKid, CD Baby, getting your record, on streaming services. Affiliate with a collection society. That would be ASCAP or BMI here in the US, or maybe PRS in England, or maybe APRA in Australia. There's a collection society in most territories. They will be paying you one type of royalty on top of what your distributor pays. You'll also want to affiliate with a collection society. You're also going to want to affiliate with Sound Exchange. That was that second type of royalty that's generated on the master recording. Just another entity that is collecting another type of royalty that is generated that your distributor doesn't collect and your society doesn't collect. And the last box to check is publishing, to work with a publishing administrator such as Songtrust to collect your global royalties, your mechanicals, your performance, your micro sync, and to register your works globally to ensure that you are collecting all of these things. Kato, what is your experience with these 4 topics? What do you have? What don't you have as a producer? Maybe talk a little bit about that.
I have all these covered. I have all my bases covered, so I'm good. I want to make sure, as long as you have your distribution, a PRO, your publishing, and Sound Exchange, then you'll collect 99.9% of your royalties as a songwriter. So very, very important that you have every single one of these checked off. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about what Songtrust does and how you can sign up with you guys to collect your publishing globally. But yeah, I mean, I make sure that I'm registering my music every time I have a new song coming out. Very important to stay on top of all this.
Absolutely. And this is not, our advice. These are facts, right? This is how the industry works. These are the types of royalties that are generated. These are the entities and the companies that end up collecting your royalties. And if you are not properly registering your works and affiliated at the required places, those royalties will be put into the black box and eventually you will no longer be able to collect them. So this is not just us saying, hey, yeah, you should do this stuff. It's like a hard fact that this is how the industry works, and these are the boxes that you want to be checking off to ensure that you are properly collecting everything.
Yep.
Like Kato mentioned, we are going to get into Songtrust. Who is Songtrust? What do we do? Where do we fit in this publishing puzzle? Why were we founded, etc. Basically, Songtrust is a music publishing administrator and a royalty collection service. We were essentially started to ensure that independent creators, like a lot of the people on this webinar, and like Kato and like myself, can properly collect the royalties that are generated on the publishing side. For the last decades, it has been extremely difficult for creators to collect these types of royalties that are there. It's their own money, right? It's your own money, but it's become very difficult for you to collect. Songtrust was started to streamline everything and register your works globally. We currently are directly affiliated with 50 societies, both performance, mechanical, and digital licensing agencies. So if you join Songtrust, we register your works with 50 organizations around the world and collect all the royalties that they are already collecting. You do all this without giving up any ownership of your music. Like I mentioned, I myself am a client. I'm with BMI. Every quarter I get my writer share from BMI, and I get my publisher share of royalties from Songtrust. Songtrust has collected literally thousands of dollars for me that, had I not joined Songtrust, I would have never seen in my life. This is straight up the only solution for independent creators. If you do not join Songtrust, these royalties will eventually disappear. So it's super important that you register your songs with us. We will collect these royalties on your behalf. We do represent over 200,000 songwriters, over 26,000 music publishers, and over 2 million songs. We are, by the numbers, the largest music publisher in the world, and we are home to clients such as Kato himself and myself as well. Looking at our terms here, it's essentially the most artist-friendly, creator-friendly publishing deal in the industry. It's a 1-year term. Typically, publishing deals are for bare minimum 3 years, if not 10, 15, 30 years. We pay out quarterly once you start collecting. Other publishers tend to pay out twice or maybe even only once a year. It's a song-by-song basis, so you can pick and choose which songs you want to register with us. Let's say you put out your first project on Spotify and through a distributor. You can register those 10 songs with us, and your next project that you put out, you don't have to register with us, right? It's not like we require your entire catalog. You can pick and choose individually which songs you want us to publish and collect on, which we don't want to. It's completely up to you. The most important aspect of a admin deal essentially is the fact that you keep 100% of your copyrights. So you get to collect all these different types of royalties without having to give up any ownership of your music. Typically, if you do sign a traditional publishing deal, it's most likely a co-publishing deal, which essentially means that your publisher is going to own a percentage of your copyright, potentially for life. You may get it back in 30, 50, 70 years, whatever it may be, but odds are that publisher is going to maintain ownership of your rights, of your catalog, in perpetuity until you pass, whatever it is. We do not take any sync rights. So you are free to partner with a third-party sync company who may only have 10 clients who will focus on you and give your catalog the attention that it deserves, pitch your music for things like TV shows, films, commercials, and whatnot. We don't take those sync rights. So again, you're free to work with third-party companies. Typically, your publisher will get exclusive sync rights to your catalog. We have a 15% commission on the royalties that we bring in on your behalf, you end up receiving 85%. Again, this is just on what is called the publisher share. So you continue to receive your writer share directly from your PRO, such as ASCAP or BMI. Other publishers, those percentages can go as high as 50%. Typically, we see them at least 20, if not 25 or 30%. And that's 15% on all the royalties that we bring in on your behalf, whether it's retroactive or international or YouTube or whatever it is. We do see other companies offering potentially 30% commission on royalties that were earned before now. Essentially, all of your retroactive royalties are subject to potentially 30% instead of 15%. Basically, I would rather have 85% of something rather than 100% of nothing. Again, I use Songtrust to collect. I've made money through Songtrust that I would have never otherwise seen, and I can do so without giving up any ownership of my catalog. And obviously, we are technology focused and client centered. So you will have a point of contact. We have a chat box in your account. You can message our team and get all the answers that you need and help that you need. So real quick, Kato, I want to ask you, what made you get your publishing in order? How did you come across Songtrust? What kind of experiences did you go through to make you think, okay, wait a minute, I need to understand what publishing is, the royalties that are being generated, how I can collect, and why you ultimately chose to join Songtrust?
You know, I'm sure I was a lot like the people in watching right now. Like, I was just a bedroom producer that started making beats, and then I started getting placements, and then all of a sudden, like, I had a lot of music out there and I didn't necessarily know how to collect it. And one of my good friends, who is the CEO of BeatStars, I'm sure, you know, there's a lot of producers in here that sell beats online. BeatStars is the biggest online marketplace for producers and songwriters. He actually put me onto Songtrust a couple years ago. He was like, hey, bro, like, I know you got a lot of records coming out. You should definitely check out Songtrust. So I started doing my research. I connected with CJ from Songtrust. Shout out to CJ.
Shout out to CJ.
And and I really just started digging and seeking out the information that I needed to know in order to collect all the money that was owed to me, basically. And once I learned what Songtrust did and the fact that I could still maintain 100% ownership of my publishing, and you guys would just go out and collect money for me. Like, I just got a fat check from Songtrust this month, and that was money that I would have never otherwise collected on my own or through my PRO. And I didn't even know it was out there, you know? So you have to be proactive about going out, learning the information, figuring out who you need to register with, sign up with, where you need to register your music, make sure that you have your splits all in order. And I'm sure there are a lot of people in here that have money just sitting out there waiting to be claimed. So it's very, very, very important. And Songtrust plays a really important part in that. So, you know, that's why I'm with you guys.
Absolutely. And to your point about being proactive, you know, shout out everybody in this webinar right now. We had a lot of interest in this, and it's good to see that all of you guys are taking your careers seriously, doing the research, getting the information that you need, and being proactive about this stuff. I assume, Kato, whenever you collaborate with someone, you know, maybe you send some beats out or you work with an artist in the studio, you determine your splits. Maybe that song comes out 2 months later, and as soon as it drops, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever it is, that same day you register that song in your Songtrust account, just to ensure that there's no delay in your royalties. You're being proactive about registering the stuff, not reactive. If you're reactive, those royalties are probably going to end up getting black boxed, right? So me personally, before I started working at Songtrust, I heard about it, but it took me about 4 or 5 months before someone told me to sign up, to actually go sign up. And that 4 or 5 months that I waited, I probably lost at least 1 quarter's worth of royalties, because I had been co-writing and releasing music with other artists. One of them is a big major label artist, so I had some pretty big cuts. And those songs were coming out. They had been available on streaming services for years before I really started registering this stuff. I was collecting from BMI, but again, if you're just with BMI, that they're not collecting everything that you're owed, which is where Songtrust comes into play. So I was with BMI thinking, oh, great, like this is publishing, right? And it wasn't until I started working here that I really fully understood the landscape, and I really understood the value of Songtrust. And, you know, that's why I chose to become a client. Essentially, I want to just collect the money that is generated by my music. And ultimately, there's really no other option. So, Kato, thank you so much for your insight and your experience and everything. I do believe we are going to um, talk about your tour, Sound Advice. So I'm gonna let you take over from here.
Hey, so yeah, I appreciate the plug. Sound Advice is something I started this year. It's basically an in-studio tour that I'm doing. So the first round of cities is, I believe I have 27 dates, 23 cities around the US, UK, and Canada. And I'm basically just going city to city, studio to studio, connecting with 25 artists, producers, songwriters in the studio for kind of a private event with me. So included in that is like music feedback. Plus, I talk a lot about, I give practical advice on the music industry and basically just tips on how to navigate the music industry, no matter what it is that you want to do. And again, this is for artists and producers and songwriters, and we've even had engineers. So whatever it is that you want to do, I'm just all about helping you figure that out for yourself and arming you with the right tools and the knowledge to navigate the music industry. I think there are a lot of opportunities that are out here in 2019. So, and we've already had like Grammy award winning producers pull up to the events, and we've had experts in the industry pull up. I plan on having a lot of special guests throughout the tour. So I'm actually leaving again this Friday for Charlotte, and then we'll be going up to DC and Philly and New York and then Boston. So if you guys want more information on it, go to soundadvicetour.com and you can purchase direct tickets directly from the website.
Yeah, and I have been following along, on your Instagram. Haven't been able to attend in person yet, but everything seems to be going really well, providing great feedback, and ultimately just paying it forward. You're someone who has experience in this industry, specifically as a producer, but ultimately as a songwriter, as a creator, and the fact that you just want to pay everything that you've learned forward is obviously a great thing, and that's why we appreciate you, and we obviously appreciate you being a Songtrust client and working with us. There is, I believe, a discount code up currently. That is Kato's discount code for the one-time registration fee that we have for Songtrust. So that will be available throughout till the end of this webinar. If you do want to sign up, I highly recommend doing it today. Even right now, right? I told you I waited about 4 or 5 months because I'm an artist and I'm skeptical and I question everything. And ultimately, that was probably the reason I missed out on a few quarters worth of royalties. So be proactive. Songtrust is ultimately just a service that you really do need in order to collect everything that you're owed. It's one of the services that you need to collect everything that you're owed, but specifically related to publishing. It's really the most crucial aspect, especially as a producer, especially as a songwriter and a creator. So we are going to move to a Q&A. Kato and I are going to hop up here on with our webcams, let y'all see how we actually look, how we doing.
Hey.
And Kato, how's it going, man?
Good, man.
We got a ton of questions throughout this thing. We're going to do our best to get to some of them. So let me just read off a few here. What do you think? Just pick from anywhere? Okay. Well, here's one. For Kato, what's the most ideal way for producers to maximize potential money?
Sign up with Songtrust.
Indeed.
I mean, like I said earlier, I had money just sitting out there that was just waiting to be claimed, and I didn't even know it existed. Like, nobody's going to send you a statement or a report, with all the money that you have sitting out there from streams or from your placements or whatever, even like microsync royalties. Like, nobody is going to tell you how much money you have that hasn't been collected that you're owed. Like, that's your job as a songwriter, as a producer, artist. That's your job to do the research, to, again, arm yourself with as much knowledge and the tools that you need to go out and claim that money. I don't know if that answered his question. I don't know if he was talking about like different revenue streams that were available to producers, but I think if you're like taking advantage of any revenue stream as a producer or songwriter, signing up with a pub admin like Songtrust is probably one of the best things that you can do for yourself.
Absolutely, could not agree more. Let's see what some of these other questions are here. What's the best way to bring up a split sheet after the song is recorded? In my experience, once the song is recorded, you really just broach that topic, whether it's actually in the studio that same day during the session or maybe a few days later. Obviously, you want to get to it before the song comes out, but you basically just say, hey, we made this song. I'm going to be registering it with Songtrust, maybe just with BMI, maybe with ASCAP, wherever you're registering it. We need to know what these splits are. So maybe only it's you and one person. Again, maybe it can be assumed it's 50-50, but you want to talk about this. Maybe someone feels that they contributed more than the other, right? It's kind of like a science project in high school. Who contributed what? Who's going to get what percentage, right? But don't make it awkward. It doesn't have to be awkward. This is going to determine whether or not you're going to get paid as a creator. So again, Kato, you want to talk a little bit about, determining splits and how you go about that?
Yeah, it's pretty much that, bro. Like, when you go out and buy anything, you get a receipt, right? It's kind of the same idea. If you create a piece of music or a composition, you want to make sure that it's documented and everyone knows. It's like an itemized receipt, literally. So at this point in my career, it's not an awkward conversation. After the record is finished, I literally just hit them up and I'm like, yo, let's do splits. And then I'll share them on a Google Doc or a spreadsheet. Everyone is extremely transparent about what everyone owns on the record so that there's no confusion down the line. And I think that's the biggest thing. We are protecting ourselves from any sort of legal issues or confusion about who owns what after the record is released. That's all it is.
Absolutely. It's business. This is going to dictate whether or not you get paid. So you want to have this conversation. Here's a great one that is super important. I'm glad, whoever asked this. If you get a placement with an artist on a label, will your publishing be registered for you or do you have to put it in manually? Oftentimes, if you rely on a label or an artist to register that song, they will do it incorrectly. That's just how it works. Maybe there's someone with the same name as you and they list that other person. Everything comes down to your IPI, which is your unique songwriter ID that BMI or ASCAP will assign you, right? So if me and Kato work on a song together, I'm going to go register that song. Ben O'Connell, BMI, here's my IPI. Kato, you said ASCAP, right? IPI. If there's another Kato out there and I listed that other Kato's IPI, that Kato will have gotten all these royalties, right? So if you rely on someone else to register this stuff, they will most likely mess it up and it will cause a lot of issues. You might not ever get paid. It might just be super delayed. They might be incorrect. And that's what Songtrust allows you to do. It allows you to take publishing into your own hands. You don't have to wait around for somebody else to register these songs for you. As soon as it drops, if you know the splits, as soon as it's on Spotify or Apple Music, it's generating money, you can register that song in your Songtrust account. And that song will ultimately get sent out around the world. And that metadata, will determine how people get paid and whatnot. So don't wait around for other people. Make a Songtrust account, register your song here. Kato, real quick, have you dealt with anybody misregistering your stuff, not crediting you properly, all the above?
Absolutely. And I have a lot of music out there. And so it's just a matter of time before someone sitting at a desk that doesn't know who you are and doesn't really have all your information misspells your name or gets one number wrong on your IPI, or that's all it takes. And a lot of this just comes down to human error. And so you want to be proactive about it. Just be proactive, take control of the situation and register the song on your end. So that was a big mistake that I was making before, is like I was always waiting for other people to do this stuff for me until I realized that I need to be proactive and register these songs myself. And I didn't even know that I could do that And so that's another reason why when I found Songtrust, like I just got on it. You know,
Right.
I was proactive about the situation and started registering all of my own music that I had a share on.
Absolutely. So if I collab with an artist, do both of us have to be signed to the same PRO or Songtrust? No. I collaborate with people who are with ASCAP and PRS in England and even CSAC or APRA, all these different PROs around the world. I've worked with writers, artists, producers who are with multiple PROs. You don't have to be with the same one. And you don't both have to be with Songtrust. Basically, if you register a song with us, we're just going to collect on behalf of your share. So if I wasn't a Songtrust client and Kato was, and we collaborated on a song, Kato would register that song in his account. He would credit me. He would say, Ben's with BMI, here's his IPI. But Kato's only going to collect on behalf of his 50%. Songtrust is only going to register and collect on behalf of his share of the song. Now, if both of us are with Songtrust, only one of you has to register the song, and then you guys should reach out to us directly, and we will add it to your the second person's account. You can both register it, but ideally one of you registers it, and then you contact us, and we'll add it to your account. That's going to be the last question that we're going to take. Kato, I'm going to ask real quick, besides joining Songtrust and registering your songs with us, what is some final advice that you have for producers out there, everybody tuning into this webinar today?
For producers, I would recommend, I mean, you know, there's so many different ways to monetize your music now. I think YouTube is one of the big platforms that a lot of producers are just throwing up their beats, right? So you want to make sure that you're collecting those microsync royalties. And so, you know, there are a lot of, I made an Instagram post about this, you know, not too long ago, but I know Songtrust covers microsync royalties, but you can also there's also dedicated companies that you can sign up with that specifically you register your beats with them and they'll go in and collect those YouTube royalties for you. So whatever option you take, whatever route you take, just make sure you do your research and know that if your music is out there, then it is being monetized, and you need to make sure that you're collecting on that.
On all accounts, not just YouTube, right? If you produced for an artist and that artist put that song out and it's on Spotify, they didn't tell you, you find it 6 months later, that's 6 months worth of royalties that, you know, had you talked about splits, had you registered that song day one, you would have been able to collect on. So we are going to hop off our webcams here. Certainly appreciate everyone coming out today, taking publishing into your own hands, taking your career seriously, being proactive about obtaining this info. Feel free to follow both Kato and I on Instagram. I'm sure a lot of you already follow Kato. Feel free to follow me as well. And Songtrust, at Songtrust. But definitely connect with both of us there. We're always in our DMs answering questions, talking to creators and producers and songwriters and whatnot. You can also email us, contact@songtrust.com. Again, just want to stress the importance of getting this done, registering your songs, joining Songtrust. We will help you access these royalties that you're not currently collecting, and royalties that have, you know, been sitting there for a few years. We're able to collect some of them, if not all of them. So definitely something very important you want to take seriously. Sign up today would be my recommendation. But again, thank you everybody for coming out. We appreciate it and hope to see you guys soon. Kato, thanks again.
Thank you, Songtrust. Appreciate y'all.
All right. Later, everyone.